So the dispute is just that I hold to modal essentialism by Kit Fine. That's my stance point, and I don't agree with S5 because I feel like it's a confusion on modal semantics, which don't really work, conventionally speaking.
So you say you hold to modal essentialism, correct?
The theory proposed by Kit Fine. Are you aware of Kit Fine's works or no?
Yeah, so I'm familiar with modal essentialism and that view particularly. So I'm just trying to understand how is this relevant to our dispute we had on S5?
Well, S5 attributes possibility to modal semantics, like say for example necessity and etc. I don't really agree with that because modal essentialism would sit there and say, oh yeah, possibility. Well, specifically, it's a multitude of things. I mean, you could hold to the overlapping S4, which inside system B, but there's also the point where it says, oh yeah, well, if it is necessarily possible, it has to be necessarily possible within all possible worlds, and you would hold to an accessibility relationship.
Okay, so to be clear on this, that was just like one aspect of S5. I was asking you for like an exhaustive definition of S5, which you've not given. So I'm just going to move on from that and just focus on the primary disputes here. So, insofar as the S5 modal system, what really is the contention here? Because the things that are established in S5 are going to be analytically true given the definitions of the modal terminologies like possibility and necessity. Do you understand this or no?
I already kind of gave the contention, my bad, stutter. But yeah, I can clarify the contentions again. I believe I stated that obviously I have the view that essence grounds modality, and I think that S5 confuses the attributing possibility to things like necessity, even though you should attribute things like necessity to an already existing possibility, which essence would ground. So I think obviously the opposition in the sense that I'm holding to would just be that obviously essence grounding that sense would be kind of actual to the specific system that S5 tends to also appreciate to or adore in that sense. I don't think you should really I don't think I really need to get a definition for that. I mean, like, when I say I don't really need to give a definition to that, I'm just saying that, oh yeah, there's something really there. Like, obviously, if I were to give a definition, obviously that limit, like, to what I'm saying to a specific thing.
Okay,
I'm just
so
saying it guards for all possibility.
Because you're saying that the idea of things which ground. Could you mute your mic, please? Because you believe that essence is ground modality, that's going to be something which is incompatible with believing in S5. That's what your position is. Those are your words, not mine. Now, the problem is there are different accounts of essences. You have accounts of essences which is just talking about the essential features of a given object, or maybe if you're just someone who's a Thomist, it might be a bit more nuanced. They're appealing to principles of operation, which grounds external acts. And these are different accounts of essences that are being talked about in the metaphysical literature. But the primary point that I'm really focused on here, which I'm just really perplexed about, is you make the claim that possibilities cannot be attributed towards necessities. It's a category error to attribute possibilities to necessity because it is the case that modal facts or modality is grounded in virtue of essences, which, by the way, I'm not sure why there would be a contradiction in modality being the types of things which are grounded by metaphysically real essences, and it's still been the case that it can attribute possibilities towards necessity. How would that even be something which entails a contradiction in any way whatsoever?
So I do just want to clarify some. When you say that essential properties, no, I don't think you'd hold to specific properties because obviously, like say for example, Kit Fine inside his work, he makes the distinction about this, and he does clarify that. Obviously, if you sit there and say, oh yeah, well the essential properties, blah blah blah, ground necessity, make that sense that it has to be necessarily possible by this, and it cannot be the case in another world. He gives that as an example to be clear, but Socrates is not his properties in that sense. That you could say he has a property of being Socrates, but he's not the property in itself. You'd say Socrates obviously is distinct from the set of that, and then you just be referring to what exists in that sense, and therefore you'd have some type of real thing that says by what essence it is, like it just exists. You would affirm that it does have the essence to be instantiated in that sense. I mean, you can like say it brings in like some type of second order concept. But I mean, even then, so I just kind of yeah, that's modal essentialism, but it's not the specific view Kit Fine lays out. So using a broader definition does not innate completely equal to the specific view Kit Fine studies. So I'm just going to make that clear that that's his work and that's the distinction. That's kind of what it is. So you could send that definition all you want. It's specifically not the view I'm holding to, and specifically which Kit Fine describes he's obtaining to. So I've made the distinction, right? I've made that distinction clear, and I believe I've said that before. And I'm going to be addressing the categories. I also apologize if I'm talking too long, as per I'm not really sure if you're used to that. But yeah, no. The problem is that if I'm sitting there saying what's real grounds what possibility is, the possibility has to be there to even sit there and say, if this thing exists, then we should attribute something contingency to it, right? Say, for example, if we use properties, we'd be confusing with what the thing exists as with the properties in that sense, which is clearly not there, because you'd have to have some kind of operator existing in that sense to even claim the modal fact.
Wait, did he say modal?
What'd you say?
Which philosopher did you appeal to originally to appeal to modal essentialism?
Kit Fine.
Okay, and you're telling me that Kit Fine does not index essences to essential properties? So what is the kind of essences to begin with?
When you sit there and say you affirm something's real, like I'm just sitting there saying it's real. That's what I mean when I say essence, right? He also talks about obviously the properties would be in there inside the set, and that's what also.
Something. Just to be clear, essences is something which is real. That's what you take essence to be, that which is real, correct?
Well, I was clarifying. Let me just re-explain. Maybe it's better. What? Chill. No. Kit Fine strictly focuses on first order.
What do you think of property?
Are you asking for second order or first order?
I'm asking for the definition of property in the case that it is not possible.
Okay, so when you're asking for the definition of property, that doesn't really narrow it down. I mean, obviously, I could just clarify what type of thing Kit Fine holds to. Like, obviously, in terms of properties, when he's talking about this, obviously, in that sense, I don't think it'd be a second order because it's describing what innately the thing is. That's not my definition. I'm just like explaining the definition of Kit Fine's.
You think things about just be clear. You think descriptions about whether or not something is real or something exists. Could you mute your mic, please? So to be clear, do you believe that things which are going to be descriptive of if something is real or existent is a first order properties disposition? I'm curious.
So I've explained that those would be properties, but when back to the original question, what Kit Fine defines as real in that sense and what in terms of essence it is, I made the distinction. Chill. I'm going back to the original question, which was asked, and then I'll move on. Yeah.
You're running from the question.
If you're okay, I'm not. Can we please stop with the Reddit shows? I'm trying to maintain track on substance. Thank you very much.
What are you doing?
But what do you mean? What I'm doing?
Are you LARPing?
No, I'm not LARPing. No, I don't think I'd be LARPing. I mean, I guess you could say that if it's relative to you.
Right now, and then that's my style.
That's what I proposed.
And please turn on noise suppression, please.
And there's no way. I mean, noise suppression doesn't even fix it. It's still loud even with noise suppression. But yeah, let me just clarify. Kit Fine's views. He makes a distinction in terms of properties and the existence. He says that the set of what it can be in terms of properties. Say for example, I even said this earlier that Socrates can have the property being Socrates, but it's not exactly the existential feature of that. So you'd be saying the existence in that sense, right? The existence is more so the essential nature, right? The essence of what possibility is indexed to, the essence of possibility. That's firmly what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so just a couple of things, right? So you've not fully really responded to the actual question I've asked you in the most recent aspect of the conversation. But let's focus on a couple of claims you've made, a couple of really confusing claims you've made. So you say that essences in the context of modal essentialism, even given the philosophy of appeal to, by the way, it's not the case that it's going to be indexed towards essential properties. These are your words, not mine. And you basically proceed, to define essences in virtue of what is called in virtue of what is real, I should say. So you define essence in virtue of what is real. Now, the fundamental problem with this is simply that if you're going to be defined an essence in virtue of what is real, right, and it is the case that it is a necessary characteristic for something to be the type of thing which is real, for it to be the type of thing which is going to be related to an essence, which is what grounds a modality, then we collapse into what is called an essential property, because all essential properties would just be the necessary characteristics that has to be upheld for a particular thing to even exist, or for a particular task to be accomplished, or for it to be the case that this thing itself, sorry, is even described properly. Insofar as the other part of what you're talking about here, so not only is it the case that your account of essences it just translates into what is real, which collapses into essential properties trivially, but also I'm not really understanding the main point of the argument here. If you're saying specifically that it is the case that possibility cannot be attributed towards necessity because necessity is grounded in what is real, I want to see what the argument is for that claim. How is it going to be the case that modal facts being grounded in what real is, or what the things are which are real, is going to be something which is logically incompatible with the sort of idea that you can attribute possibility to necessity such that S5 system is a false modal system? How does that even logically fall in any way whatsoever?
My bad.
You can talk now,
Apologies
by the
that
way.
yeah, my bad. I was dealing with something IRL, but yeah. So to clarify against the essential property point, I think I already clarified that that's still a set of the properties which is supposed to mean it does not collapse, because you'd make a distinction between what it's existing and then its index to the nature or possibility in itself. So you'd say what is real would be talking about the existence thing to ground essentially the possibility. So you'd be saying essence of possibility is in what's real, right? That's essentially what K-Fine would be holding to. And if you're talking about specifically, right, let's say, for example, essential properties, right? If you're saying to be real in that sense is instantiated to be a property, I don't really think that, like, holds in the first. I mean, like, it's still not the same thing. Like, you can, like, clarify, like, the being in itself. It's not the same thing as the properties. Like, that's easy to, like, say. Like, you could say, oh yeah, well, as I said, essentially is a property of the being, but the being in itself, this is just a factor to describe the being. It's not the same thing as existing purely as the being. Like, it's just not the same. Like, the existence would have to ground essentially. Chill. I'm not even done yet. Chill. Thank you. Essentially, as I was saying, can I finish, please, without any type of...
You like to like a long pause, translates to you being finished, but continue, go ahead.
Okay, can you stop? Please and thank you. Thank you. Anyways, as I was saying, you need the existence to inherently, like, claim that properties are capable of even describing something, which just makes the distinction. Yeah. But another thing I do want to regard is that the argument for sitting there and talking about which was the S5. Yeah, I think I already clarified, but S5 talks about if, like, possibility, right? If something is necessarily possible, it has to exist across all world. That's still attributing necessity to possibility. You need the possibility in regards to that to even, like, exist, and then you claim something within that type of possibility that's grounding it would be, like, necessary in that sense. Like, you wouldn't say possibility is necessary. You'd say something is necessary in virtue of possibility. That's clearly how that should go. Obviously, otherwise there's contradicting what should be there and, like, presented. I mean, I'm pretty sure I even, like, said this in the beginning, so I don't know why, like, I'm even, like, reestablishing it. I guess we just kind of, like, got off far the track, I guess. But go.
Yeah, so you just committing blunders after blunders. Actually, it's actually pretty embarrassing. You believe that essences or talking about what is real is not going to be informing someone about modality. That's obviously incorrect. And it's going to be the case it collapses into modal logic or modally related facts because of the B axiom, which talks about if it is the case that something is true, then it's going to be the case that it is necessary that such thing is a possibility. So of course, something being true, that is, if it is a part of the actual world, which entails it being real, is going to be necessarily emblematic of there being some sort of possibility related facts. So it is not going to be the case there's some sort of category error by grounding modal facts or modality in virtue of what is real. And you telling me that there's some sort of distinction between what is real and what is related to modality is actually incorrect. What is real is something which is not relevantly distinct from what is possible, because it's going to be the case that possibility is going to be the type of thing which is required for something to be real to begin with. So it's not distinct relevant in the sense you're talking about there. As it pertains to the other parts of what you're saying, again, you're not establishing as to why this is the case that modal facts or modal essentialism would be incompatible with the S5. All you're doing is making a whole bunch of claims, and you're filling the dead air with a bunch of nonsensical gobbledygook. And I'd like to make a couple of things clear, actually. So I want you to listen carefully to what's going on here. So as it relates to the point about if it is the case that you could have some sort of like modally related facts, which are going to be the types of things which are grounded in essences, but is going to be the type of thing which is incompatible with attributing necessity, or sorry, possibility to necessity. You've not justified the leap in logic right there. In fact, if we focus on the actual point that you're making in the conversation, you realize that it is clearly incorrect, right? Because number one is simply that not only is there no contradiction whatsoever in doing this, but also it is the case that possibility and necessity in this given context of the conversation is going to be something which is going to be true or compatible with the other, because their semantical landscapes are not going to be the types of things that generates a contradiction. Now, the reason as to why something like possibly necessary is going to be something which entails necessity is because of the fact that it is going to be analytically true, given the semantics of possibility and the semantics of necessity. So when you're talking about necessity here, you're talking not just about one world, you're talking about all worlds in the domain of possibilities, or in the space of possibilities, or all situations in the space of possibilities. And so because that is the case, if it is true in some situation that it is going to be true in all situations that X is true, then it's going to be the case necessarily that it will be true in all situations, because of the fact that necessity is not closed or indexed to just one possibility, but it quantifies necessarily over all possibilities by definition. So that's the reason as to why possibly necessary is going to be something which logically entails necessity. That fact is going to be something which is analytically true. What do you mean by analytic facts here is going to be the types of facts which are going to be true definitionally. That means it's true by definition, and all things which are true by definition are true necessarily. So for it to be rejected in the S5 modal system, and more specifically to be denying the idea that possibly necessary entails necessary facts, is going to be you rejecting analytic facts, which is not rejecting facts which are logically necessarily true. So are going to keep on rejecting those sort of facts, or going to be the type of person who is going to remain logically consistent and adopt the position that it is going to be the case that these logically necessary facts, as I illustrated a while ago, are going to be the types of things which are in fact true, and at the same time you're going to concede your own position, which is that modal essentialism is going to be incompatible with your position, which you believe establishes as to why S5 modal system is something which is false. Which one is it?
So I just want to correct you on one thing. Effectively, as I said earlier, you need possibility to even establish some type of thing like necessity. And you said, oh yeah, something necessary is going to remain across all possible worlds, obviously, as you said. So you still need those possible worlds to even have necessity. So I mean, you just agree with my point, like no point, you just conceded to that. So I mean, you need the grounding for possibility in that sense, like necessity. Like if you're trying to attribute possibility to something like necessity, you need to attribute more so necessity to possibility. You wouldn't be sitting there saying, oh yeah, possibility is attributed to like a modal term. You need the possibility in that sense to even like claim that. Like that's what I've been on about, like precisely. So I don't know why, if you're agreeing to the point, you'd be like sitting there and like saying, oh well, obviously the possible worlds like necessary facts, you know, or necessity in that sense has to remain across all possible worlds. Yes, possible worlds have to be there to even claim necessity, bro. I mean, that's just basic like modal logic at this point. It's like modal logic 101. Also, no, it's not a reverb, it's just my mic. My bad, apologies for it. But as I was saying though, like regardless of that, moving on to the other thing, but like the apparent like collapsing like of my system, no, just from its grounding. I mean, like obviously you already agreed that possible worlds have to be there, and like obviously some type of grounding. Fuck, this one guy said chat, let me lose my concentration. Let me think back to what your point was real quick. Okay, I lost my focus. I like responded to the one guy inside chat and I lost what I was talking about. Just kindly, you think you could repeat it, please, and thank you.
That sounds like a skill issue on your part. Consider the points you made, if you're not going to respond to your garbage responses.
I just asked for you like to repeat so I can like finish what I was saying. It's just like I lost
I don't think
concentration.
there's anything
Like,
else that I said which you have not addressed, even though all of your addresses to my points are complete garbage. So can you respond?
well, I mean, if you want to say it's garbage, I mean that's relative to you. I mean, sure, I
Okay, so
guess.
here's
I
a
mean,
couple
like,
of points you
anyways.
made in the conversation, and I think you're just embarrassed for the bad way. I think you have like a fetish for this like humility and stuff of the conversation, right? So you made a couple of points pertaining to the idea that it is the case that necessity requires possible worlds. That's not the case, retard. You can actually believe in there being necessary facts while being an anti-realist about possible worlds. You don't have to believe in possible worlds. You can be a nihilist or anti-realist about possible worlds and still believe in the position that there are going to be certain necessary facts. There's a distinction, by the way, between possible worlds and the possibilities and things like possible situations. There's a subtle distinction, by the way. So no, it is not the case that it's required for it to be committed to any sort of necessary fact. That was completely incorrect, and that was a completely ridiculously weak argument. Now, you made another point, a funny point, actually, a very hilarious point. And when I say it's fun and hilarious, I mean it in the way where it's funny to laugh at, not to laugh with, because your points are complete garbage. You made the claim, and we're just going to give you a quick recap of the conversation, and just for anyone who just joined the voice call. So this LARP here, I forgot this character's name. I don't really know this filler character, to be honest. So he says he's a modal essentialist. And he takes essences to not be essential properties, by the way, but he takes essences to be something which is very unique, actually. He believes essences are reflective of what is real. All he believes essence means is that which is real. And so he believes that it is the case that possibilities and necessities are grounded in what is real, then it would in fact be the case that S5 modal system, which includes all of these axioms, like for example, possibly necessary, entailing necessity, is something which is going to be the type of thing which is false. He believes this, not me, these are his words. And so I've asked him a very simple question, which is what's going to be the logical contradiction such that this claim is substantiated or authenticated by any of the available evidence? And so far, he has done none of the relevant works whatsoever, none of the relevant epistemic works whatsoever to establish as to why this claim is correct. And so there's no logical contradiction in believing that all of the modal facts like possibility and necessity, these concepts, there's no contradiction in believing that these things are grounded in something which is real, which you translate to essences, and it still be the case that it's going to be a true axiom to affirm that possibly necessary is going to be something which is going to entail necessity. And lastly speaking, or the last point I want to emphasize on, and I'm just going to ask him real quickly to just listen close to what I'm talking about here, because you've been doing a very poor job, track what's going on. Right, so listen closely. Right, so I've given us a very simple argument, a very simple, concise argument, insofar as the reason as to why it would in fact be the case that possibly necessary entails necessity. And by the way, you can believe in this prop without being committed to any of these things existing. The reason being that when you're talking about possibility, just to make sure you understand this, all that means is that it is true in some possible situation, possible world, or possible state of affairs. When you're talking about necessity, because necessity is not localized, but rather universalized, it's going to be something which quantifies over all possible ranges or over all possible situations and the entirety of the possibility space. Now, considering these two facts into perspective, if, and I repeat, if you have a case scenario in which you have a situation in which it is true in some possible situation that X is true in all possible situations, then necessarily X is true in all possible situations. Well, an uneducated moron like you, for example, will ask a retarded question like, well, Apollo, why is that the case? Well, the answer for the obvious, the reason as to why that's the case is because it's or is blatant that it is true in some possible situation, that it is true in all possible situations. And because necessity is non-localized and it is universalized by definition, it would have to be the case. It's going to follow from that specific criteria that it's going to be universalized and not localized. So if it is to be the case that X is true, and by X we're just talking some random proposition, if X is true in world 1 and it is true in world 1 that X is necessarily true, if it was to be the case that there is some world 2, for example, in which it's not true, then it would contradict the whole tenet of necessity quantifying over all worlds. Because if necessity was to quantify over all worlds, then it would in fact be the case that given it quantifying or relating to all worlds or all possible situations or all possible state of affairs, I should say, then it would be the case that as a result of such, it would be the case that it would have to be true in all situations, in all worlds, whatever you want to call it. So that's the pretty obvious justification as to why this thing would follow, and you've not been addressing this actual argument insofar as why it logically necessarily follows from the modal semantics of possibility and necessity as to why this thing would in fact be the case. In fact, you've just been filling up the dead air with a bunch of filler words and a bunch of unnecessary, unrelated jargons which you can't spell properly and which you don't even understand properly. So I'm going to ask you one more time. I'm going to give you another chance to redeem yourself. Could you give me a relevant, substantially uplifting objection to any of the arguments, to any of the points, to any of the actual ideas I've brought up in this conversation to demolish your obviously ridiculous, preposterous position? Could you do so? Without wasting time.
Sure, so let's start about how you completely blundered on even defining my position, because your brain cells don't seem to fucking work. They can't have a real, I don't know. It just seems that you can't fucking work your brain cells like a fucking retarded 8 back in Jamaica, you fucking dumbass. Anyways, right, besides the insulting, I just thought, throwing some rhetorical jabs myself, but, yeah, no, I took to defining Kit Fine's position about modal essentials, so I didn't just say it instead of broad sense, as you said. And when I didn't say, quote unquote, essence is real, and it's just that, I just said, obviously, sitting there saying something is real, obviously, to index something is definitely there, right? It'd be the essence, in a sense, possibility, right, is grounded by something real, right? So you'd be saying the essence of possibility, right, is grounded by the realness, right? I'd not say essence is just reflexive of being real. Obviously, I'd accept if something is existing, then you accept the properties of that specific being. Obviously, I'd say those are the attributes of a specific being. Obviously, that they have to hold to, metaphysically speaking, or otherwise it's just going to hold to a contradictory position, right? Contradictory position, okay? So I just wanted to get that out of the way, that obviously I'm just saying something real grounding possibility is just in there saying, existentially speaking, the nature of possibility, right, is to sit there and be grounded by the essence of what should be real, right? I don't think there's any contradiction by sitting there saying this is the essence of grounded by realness, right? As I've clarified. Anyways, going back to another thing about possibility, you said, yeah, quantifies over possible worlds, and then you made a distinction between possibilities and possible worlds. Possible worlds are just things that obviously should be contingently true, speaking wise. They could fail to exist, or they could also be possibilized. But then you made a universalization about possibility, which is obviously a thing that the S5 holds to. I mean, I never rejected that. I just sat there and said that obviously if you attribute necessity or try and attribute possibility to a modal term without having the specific possible world in question exist, or the possibility be capable of existing in that sense, obviously, if you try to say necessity comes before that without any type of possibility, that's just a contradiction, retard. Anyways, you said you could be an anti-realist about possibilities. I mean, even then you need to exist at a possible world, our world, to even hold to that position, so that's just retarded, right? Anyways, going on to more of your points, which you said, obviously that's how the semantics work. Do you even know how to define possibility in that sense? Do you know how to define possibility, right? If you have something that's possible, obviously it's just the case that's permissible under modal facts. And earlier, I just remembered what your objection was when I said interact. I finally managed to remember they were sitting there saying, my position could be explained by modal facts. No, it cannot. If you talk about, we need what's possible to ground something that's existing, obviously that just be hinting at something circular or self-defeating. No, because you'd be saying, the existence of X allows for that possibility to even happen in the sense. Say, for example, the existence of that possible world, or what's possible in that sense to ground possibility, is what's existing. It's grounding that. So obviously it's not self-defeating, or, obviously self-refuting, if you have some type of existential thing which is capable of balancing a possibility as per my position, retard. So modal facts do not explain it, it's just being grounded. There's no type of category error in which I commit with the positions I'm structuralizing the position within. Anyways, I believe I even addressed earlier, what you define my position as, just making sure so people can hear it. I subscribe to Kit Fine's point of view, which just sit there and says that whatever's real can ground possibility, or essence grounds possibility in that sense. Essentially speaking, what's real. I even made a distinction between the set of properties, say for example, the property of Socrates being X, right? or just existing as Socrates is different from the being in which Socrates is. The property is just describing what he exists as, but not necessarily like, the state of being in which it is, right? It's not specifically like the operator, but it's just describing the operator which you could apply to it. It's like specifically predicates. So that's like more so about that. But yeah, since he said I'm gonna give you one final last objection, I guess we can end it here. I even told him that the conversation was gonna be short because I'm like on a limited time. Like it's 2 a.m. right now, and I'm debating a fucking Jamaican monkey. Right? This might as well be a fucking fever dream. Anyways, yeah, I'll end my recording. You can call off your guys.
You describe that monkey. This started a bunch of things actually. So we made the point simply. You're gonna run away now. Go to bed. So you're retarded.
Because I literally prefer my life.
And let
Why the fuck are you trying to get loud? No, why are you trying to get loud? Lower your shit down, nigga. Shitty ass nigga. Why are you trying to talk? That's not working. That's not working, by the way. That's not working. Just be clear. I swear to God.